She didn't betray you. She simply stopped pretending. And you, like so many men before you, mistook survival for sincerity, routine for reverence, presence for promise. This isn't about bitterness. It's about blindness. And Machiavelli saw it long before you ever loved her. Loyalty is not romantic. It's strategic. It's never unconditional. It's always calculated. And the man who forgets that becomes a volunteer for his own destruction. You want to believe she chose you. But what if she just chose what you solved? What if her loyalty wasn't to you, but to the feeling you produced? And when that feeling changed, so did her story. Silently, surgically, without warning. This is the truth you were never told. The truth your mother softened, your friends ignored, and your heart denied. But it's the truth that might save your future, if you're brave enough to hear it. Because once you see loyalty for what it really is, you stop chasing it. And you start becoming the man who commands it. She didn't love you. She loved the version of you that knew how to disappear behind her reflection. You became what she needed. Strong but soft, silent but supportive, distant but predictable. And for a while that illusion felt like intimacy. But it wasn't love. It was choreography. Most men confuse affection with attention. She paid attention to the role you played, not the man you were when the performance ended. The moment you stopped reflecting her needs, she stopped recognizing you, not because you changed, but because the mirror cracked. This is the fracture most men never see. They think betrayal happens in a single moment, an affair, a cold goodbye. But real betrayal is gradual. It begins the moment your usefulness becomes invisible. She didn't betray you. She recalibrated, and you weren't required anymore. Jung called it shadow projection. You became the carrier of her unspoken desires, protector, healer, emotional furniture. She didn't want you. She wanted what you did to her nervous system: calm, reassurance, a mood stabilizer in human form. But when you stopped offering it, her eyes turned elsewhere. Machiavelli warned, love is preserved by benefit, but loyalty by fear or need. You removed her need. You softened your edge. You believed love meant peace. But for her, peace without emotional tension is boredom. And boredom, for the unintegrated woman, is betrayal. So she searched for a new mirror, one with sharper angles. You stayed thinking your consistency would earn closeness, but it only made you predictable, and predictability feels disposable in her world. When she stopped looking at you the way she once did, you felt it. You called it stress, fatigue, loneliness, but it was absence, and it had already moved in. She didn't destroy you. She withdrew belief. She stopped seeing the function you used to serve. And when a woman stops believing in the version of you that made her feel seen, she doesn't need to leave. You'll do it to yourself, slowly, quietly, tragically. You weren't her partner. You were her mirror until you cracked. And the moment you revealed your depth, your complexity, your pain, she saw too much. So she turned away, to someone easier to reflect. You thought time was a promise, that the years would protect you from change. You measured her presence like a savings account, as if loyalty accrues interest just because you stayed. But she wasn't saving you. She was silently subtracting. This is the burden of male illusion. To believe longevity means security, to think that because she laughed with you 5 years ago, she'd still choose you 5 minutes from now. But love is not a pension plan. She didn't leave suddenly. She decayed in place, smile by smile, silence by silence, and you missed it. Because you were counting time while she was measuring resonance. You built routine. She wanted reverence. Machiavelli warned, he who becomes dependent on time will be conquered by it. She wasn't waiting for you to earn permanence. She was watching if you could still cause mystery, spark tension, evoke something ancient, not comfort and compulsion. And when it faded, so did her conviction. You confused routine with devotion, but devotion lives in the unknown, in risk, in fear, in awe. She didn't want your predictability. She wanted your presence to feel dangerous again, like it once did, when she didn't know if you'd choose her or disappear. You offered consistency when what she craved was polarity, the spark between chaos and safety, the masculine edge. And when that voltage dropped, she looked elsewhere, not for a better man, but for a better emotional signal. You called her disloyal, but maybe she was just honest before you were. She outgrew the past you were still living in, not out of cruelty but gravity, the gravitational pull toward whatever makes her feel alive again. So no, she didn't leave. She just stopped orbiting your story, because even if you shared years, she needed moments, and you stopped giving them long before she stopped giving you herself. You stayed longer than you were seen, not out of strength, out of fear. You told yourself it was loyalty, but it was self-abandonment wearing a noble mask. You weren't committed, you were clinging. There's a moment every man remembers, the first time she looked at him with indifference. Not anger, not pain, just absence. But he stayed, hoping proximity would bring back presence. It never does. Jung said the shadow of self-worth lives in the woman he won't walk away from, because staying with someone who no longer reveres you isn't love. It's a quiet suicide, one piece of your soul at a time, dying under the weight of unspoken disrespect. She stopped admiring you, but you kept performing, hoping your endurance would earn back desire. But desire isn't restored by obedience. It needs polarity, not pity. You thought love meant staying through anything. But real love doesn't survive on memory. It needs renewal, through challenge, through mystery, through fear of loss. And when that fear died, so did the spark. You mistook habit for commitment. You called her presence a promise. But she wasn't staying for you. She was staying for comfort, for convenience, for timing, and you were too tired to see it. Loyalty without reverence is a hostage situation. You chained yourself to the past and told yourself it was integrity, but every day she looked at you with less awe, and you pretended it didn't burn. Her loyalty wasn't love, it was momentum, a pattern held together by silence and inertia. And when you finally shattered, she didn't cry. She just moved on, as if she'd been waiting. You thought silence was strength, that withholding pain was noble, that shielding her from your chaos meant protecting the bond. But all it did was erase you. She didn't stop loving you. She stopped feeling you. There's a difference between mystery and muteness, between being stoic and being emotionally dead. You called it discipline. She felt it as disappearance. And over time, her heart closed. Not out of malice, out of confusion. She wondered where your fire went, where your storm was hiding. But every time you swallowed your truth, you trained her nervous system to stop expecting your presence. She stopped checking in, because you were never really there. Machiavelli said, "The man who cannot be feared cannot command loyalty." That fear isn't about harm, it's about impact. If she can't feel your depth, your weight, your edge, she can't stay reverent. And without reverence, love turns into routine. You believed that love meant sparing her. But she didn't want safety. She wanted realness, even if it was ugly, even if it cracked your voice. She needed to feel the gravity of your soul, not the ghost of your restraint. Every unspoken truth became a wall. Every emotional omission, a subtraction. You became quiet, then passive, then invisible. And when she finally left, you blamed her absence, not your own vanishing. You weren't abandoned. You evaporated, one silence at a time. And the tragedy is, you thought you were doing the right thing. You were protecting her from your pain, but it was your pain that could have saved you. Communication isn't a soft skill. It's a survival instinct. And the man who refuses to be felt will always be replaced by the one who dares to be heard. She didn't want a hero. She wanted a human. But you mistook stoicism for worth, and she mistook your silence for indifference. You thought her warmth meant connection. You mistook affection for devotion. But most women aren't loyal to men. They're loyal to how those men make them feel, and when that feeling fades, so does their allegiance. This is not cruelty, it's design. She didn't choose you, she chose what you activated in her. The calm, the drama, the spark, the safety, and the moment that emotional cocktail changed, so did her willingness to stay. Machiavelli wrote, "People are loyal not to people, but to benefits." The benefit isn't always money. Sometimes it's meaning, sometimes it's distraction, sometimes it's the illusion of being wanted. You were her supplier, not her soulmate. The wound most men carry is confusing emotional response with existential bond. She smiled. She touched you. She stayed up late talking, and you thought it meant she saw your soul. But she didn't. She saw her reflection in your presence. And when the mirror dulled, so did her interest. You were solving something. Her anxiety, her loneliness, her hunger for control. And the moment you stopped solving it, she wasn't angry. She just recalculated the exchange rate and found better returns elsewhere. This is the weight of self-abandonment, to serve a need so well that you forget to ask your own. You thought loyalty was emotional glue, but to her, it was emotional gravity. And gravity only works while the pull is strong. She didn't betray you. She outgrew the outcome. The emotional high you once delivered became background noise. And now you're here, haunted by the ghost of your own emotional labor, still calling it love, when it was really utility. You were not her man. You were her mood stabilizer, a temporary cure for a deeper void. And when your presence stopped regulating her chaos, she didn't cry, she just moved toward the next fix. She told you you were different, that you were strong, that no one made her feel the way you did, and you believed it, not because it was true, but because you needed it to be. And in that belief, your edge began to dull. Every man has a wound, and flattery is the softest needle. She saw where you were starving, and she fed you. But what you mistook for nourishment was anesthesia, a slow numbing of your discernment. Machiavelli didn't ignore praise. He feared it. He wrote that flattery weakens the man who believes it, because a man fed by admiration becomes easy to manipulate. She doesn't need to control you with anger or demands. She just needs to keep telling you what you want to hear. You stopped evolving the moment her praise became your compass. You stayed still, thinking stillness would keep her, but no woman stays with a man who stops becoming. She wants your stillness with presence, not stagnation, and you confused one for the other. The truth? She didn't lie. You just stopped asking questions when the answers felt good. You ignored your gut, your principles, your growth, all for the dopamine of being seen, even if it was an illusion. You were addicted to her admiration, and like any addiction, it came with a hangover. The emptiness after the compliment faded, the exhaustion of performing to keep the praise alive. You became her puppet, dressed as her hero. Real loyalty doesn't require constant applause, but you didn't know that. You needed her validation to silence your inner critic. And so when she finally withdrew it, you collapsed, not from betrayal, but from withdrawal. Her loyalty didn't end when she changed. It ended when you stopped growing, because her admiration was never unconditional, it was transactional, and you were paying for it with your potential. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Not through words, but through weight. The weight that vanished from her presence. The lightness in her eyes that wasn't peace, it was detachment. But you stayed, hoping it was just a phase. Men don't miss the signs, they ignore them. They tell themselves the silence means space, the coldness means stress. The distance means nothing, because meaning would be too hard to face. Jung once said that the man who avoids truth will call betrayal a surprise. But betrayal is rarely sudden. It's slow, like a fire that starts behind the wall. And by the time the room fills with smoke, you've already inhaled too much to run. You felt it in her hands. They touched differently. You felt it in the way she looked at her phone instead of your face. You felt it when she laughed at your jokes like a stranger, but you told yourself it was fine, because lies are often easier than loss. The truth is, you didn't love her loyalty. You loved your illusion of control. You believed that staying silent was maturity, that enduring was strength. But what you were really doing was folding in slow motion. Ignorance isn't innocence, it's participation. Every time you stayed quiet, you fed the lie. Every time you avoided the question, you let the story rot. And every time you felt her pulling away and did nothing, you trained her to forget you. She didn't shock you. You silenced your instincts. And when the day came that she stopped choosing you out loud, it wasn't a betrayal. It was a conclusion you'd been avoiding. You weren't blindsided. You just kept your eyes shut until the crash. Because facing her truth would have meant facing yours. That you built your worth on being chosen. And when she stopped choosing, you had nowhere to stand. She was still there, physically. You heard her footsteps, saw her coffee cup, felt her body in bed. But she wasn't with you. She was beside you, not behind you. This is how most men drown, not in breakups, but in proximity, in the illusion that because she's close, she's committed. That access equals alignment, but nearness is not loyalty. Machiavelli warned, "An ally who is close but indifferent is more dangerous than an enemy." She didn't hate you. She outgrew you. She smiled without softness, listened without leaning in, and you kept interpreting her silence as stability. But it was just absence wearing perfume. She wasn't your partner. She was your roommate with shared memories. And the longer you called that love, the deeper you betrayed yourself, because part of you knew and kept quiet anyway. You built a castle and called her queen, but she stopped guarding the gates. She stopped feeding the fire. She stopped looking at you like you were dangerous to lose. And still, you told yourself it was just a season. Her loyalty didn't vanish. It just never anchored to you. It anchored to how you made her feel. And when the sensation faded, she didn't walk away. She just stopped showing up with her soul. This is the weight of misaligned love. To carry someone on your back while convincing yourself they're beside you. To confuse shared routines with shared reverence. And to ignore that every time you reached out emotionally, she met you with a delay, or worse, a script. She didn't leave. She was never fully there. She played the role until the story got boring, and when your presence stopped producing meaning, she quietly turned the page, long before you noticed. She didn't destroy you. She revealed where you were unguarded. Not because she was cruel, but because you built your castle on comfort, not clarity. Now you know. Loyalty isn't love. It's alignment, mystery, power. And the moment you stopped embodying those things, she didn't leave. She recalculated. So ask yourself, what were you solving for her that you forgot to solve in yourself? Why did you stay after she stopped seeing you? What if every woman you've loved was just a mirror for the part of you you refused to confront? The truth is brutal, but it's yours now. And with it, you can rise. Not to prove anything to her, but to reclaim what you gave away without knowing, your edge, your silence, your sovereignty. Because the man who understands loyalty no longer begs for it. He commands it by who he becomes in its absence. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep walking this path of brutal self-knowledge and emotional liberation. If this video showed you why her loyalty collapsed, the next will show you how to choose a woman who never needed to fake it, not like a beggar chasing warmth, but like a king guarding his fire.